Hello, everyone, and happy Monday to everyone here on the Southside Beat. My name is Chris Halicke. Thank you for joining me today, whether you are listening or watching live, or you are listening way after this went live. I really appreciate you tuning in and joining our Steelers talk here. I hope everyone had a great weekend. No, it was a very, very hot weekend in Pittsburgh, and right on par with what I'm dealing with here in North Texas, and hoping that Pittsburgh stops doing its North Texas impression by the time I move up there around this time next month. And so I am definitely needing Pittsburgh to not do that. And Travis right here says hot is an understatement. It's funny. Like I create the live files on our website. So like anytime there's a live file, Pirates, Penguins, Steelers, anything like that, I'm the one who creates those. And so whenever I do that, I look at the weather forecast for the game, because we typically, obviously hockey, not so much because, those are played in arenas, but, for Pirates and Steelers, and, I look at the weather. And so when I was looking at the weather as I was creating Pirates live files last week, whenever I moved like the app, because obviously it just opens up as your default, the Weather Channel app opens as your default location. I like clicked, I like searched Pittsburgh and clicked it. And I thought that my phone had like somehow, or the app had somehow frozen, and I was still looking at my weather. No, it was Pittsburgh's weather. And it's just, I was like, it's right on par with what North Texas is dealing with. So, it really, really hot there. And I understand your pain. I'll put it that way. And Damon asks, have I started packing yet? A lot of the packing's already been done. We had to get the house cleared out to make it show ready and everything like that. So in terms of everything else, we're obviously in the beginning stages of that. But so yes, going to talk some Steelers obviously today. Also good news for this show before we get into the main topic of today's show. Just to kind of update you guys, Matt Williamson reached out to him. He is on vacation right now. Just sent him one text. Didn't want to bother him. Don't want to, want to let the guy enjoy his vacation. I was like, hey, obviously, hope you're enjoying your vacation, but, would you be interested in coming on the show, whenever you're done? And he said, absolutely. So Williamson will be coming on here at some point. Would have been later in the week. I think we were originally going to aim for later in the week, whenever he's back from vacation, but I will actually most likely, if everything goes according to plan, be up in Pittsburgh at the end of the week to look at houses, actually. So probably won't be shows on Thursday and Friday, just kind of giving you guys a heads up because of that. If for whatever reason that falls through and, we, aren't, we don't get through the option period in our house or whatever, like I'll probably not be flying up there. I haven't bought my ticket yet, but if everything goes according to plan, I'll be up there Thursday and Friday to look at houses. And so I won't be able to do this show because I'll be spending literally all of my time with my realtor looking at a lot of houses. So, but next week seems like a really, really good time to try to bring Matt Williamson on. Excited about that. Love talking football with Matt. And and Jamie Wood says here, fantastic. I love Matt's takes. Matt's awesome. For anybody who doesn't know, former NFL scout, really knows what he's talking about, knows the game, sees the game at a level that I don't, that nobody else really does. Just phenomenal dude. And he does it so well, like in terms of explaining what he's seeing and, what he breaks down so that it's understandable, and it does a really, really good job, man. Matt's phenomenal. So, yeah. All right. So good news for the show, but let's move on to what I, was obviously like right now when these days leading up to training camp, you're going over a number of different topics, and those, when you're in mid-season or you're during free agency or during other, like, leading up to the combine or the draft, you have a lot of different things you could talk about. You got a lot of different topics. And right now the topics kind of dwindled down, but I do think that I definitely wanted to get into, like, all of the options that Omar Khan has at his disposal when it comes to the salary cap space that the Steelers have right now. While I'm talking about it, I'm going to pull up overthecap.com, and I'm going to pull up the most up-to-date figures for the Steelers. Because, okay, one thing that we, had to worry about whenever you're looking at cap space, like near the beginning of free agency or during the first few weeks of free agency, when you're trying to look at overall cap space, what you're going to have going into 2024, one thing you have to worry about is signing your draft picks, right? Like, those guys count against the cap too. There's not like some sort of separate pool for your draft picks or anything like that. Like, those contracts also count toward the cap. Well, the Steelers have signed all their draft picks, right? So those guys are all under contract. They're all being counted toward the what's called the top 51. That is how the cap is calculated. It's not like right now the roster can be up to 90 players. They're not counting 90 guys toward the cap. Every team would be way over the cap. What they do is they count the top 51 contracts, and that is essentially what that is the number that has to be under the cap, which, the NFL has their number, and then teams can roll over a certain amount from the year prior. And so that becomes your cap. You cannot go over this number. And the good thing is now there's nothing else to really worry about when it comes to taking away other cap space. Like, earlier in the offseason, to reiterate, earlier in the offseason, if you saw, oh, they got $25 million in cap space. Well, it wasn't a true $25 million, because you have to count a portion of that pool toward the draft picks. So, and B-Phil asks a separate kind of cap question. He goes, once the roster is cut to 53, doesn't the team get money back? Well, that means those players are no longer under contract, the players that get released. So you're not having to pay them that money. But every player gets their money, but only the top 51 contracts count against the cap, right? Like that is how the cap is calculated. It's the top 51 contracts. And so but anytime a player is released from their contract, the team doesn't have to pay. It's not like the moment they sign a contract in like ahead of training camp, if they get cut, it's not like they're guaranteed that salary for the year and they're like, okay, well, I don't have to worry about working this year. Like, no, that's why guys are trying to make rosters, because they're trying to, they're trying to have a job, right? They're trying to make money. And so, yeah, anytime a guy's cut, they don't count towards anything, because they're not being paid. So, all right. So cap space right now is, according to overthecap.com, is $15.9 million. You really could pretty much round that to 16 million, because that's 15.945 million. So if you round the 4 up, because 5 follows it, then that rounds up to 5, and then round that 9 up, because either way it's 16 million pretty much. So 16 million in cap space, and the Steelers typically don't operate with that type of cap space going into the season. And so you begin to wonder, okay, what's that cap space sitting there for? Right? And we all have the same reaction to that. Cody says it. They're making a move. That's the prevailing theory for just about everybody when it comes to media, when it comes to fans, that the Steelers still have another move of significance up their sleeve, and maybe that's it. Maybe this entire conversation we're having today is going to be moot, because in a couple weeks the Steelers finally pull off a trade for a number 2 receiver. Who knows? But there are options, as we've talked about. Just because the Steelers typically operate closer to the cap doesn't mean they always have to. Because if you look at the roster as it's currently constructed, yes, you can absolutely make a case that receiver needs to be upgraded. But if, let's just say, that doesn't work out for Omar, and Omar doesn't pull off a trade because he's not willing to give up the assets necessary to acquire any of those receivers, then what does he do? Does he possibly use that money to give guys multiple, we're talking about multiple guys, extensions? And the three most, I would say deserving and likely players, likely is probably more accurate, of extensions are Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, and Cam Hayward. All three guys are going into the final year of their contracts, and I would even throw Jaylen Warren into that discussion because he's going into the final year of his contract. The only difference with Jaylen Warren is that he'll be a restricted free agent, which means the Steelers, through different tenders or whatever, can maintain rights to Jaylen. And so the three I would really put, at the top of the list when it comes to possible extensions would be Najee, Patton, and Cam Hayward. Not saying that no other guys can get an extension. I'm putting those three guys at the top. And so, that goes back to what we talked about last week, with Najee Harris. Like, are the Steelers willing to go to a certain level to pay Najee Harris? Right. That level being, okay, well, we know Ramondre Stevenson got, $9 million a year from the Patriots. And so pretty safe to assume that Najee's going to want more than that. So you look at what Najee might have to be paid. You look at what it might have to cost for the Steelers to pay Pat Freiermuth. Does Pat Freiermuth sign an extension when I don't want to speak for Pat, but if I'm Pat Freiermuth, I know what my ceiling is. I know what I'm capable of. And I also know that in the 3 years that I've played in the NFL, my potential has not been realized, and it's not entirely my fault. I know that I am very, very capable of being a top 10 tight end in this league. Very capable of it. And haven't had an offensive coordinator, haven't had an offense that it's not shown up in the numbers. And so does Pat go into negotiations and is willing to take a contract based, because the Steelers, rightfully so, will want to sign him a contract based off of his production. And, I'll do a quick pull up of Pat Freiermuth's numbers over 3 seasons. Now, granted, this is, a tight end, so we're not looking at, did he have 1,000-yard season in there or anything like that? But over the course of 3 seasons, he's caught 155 passes. Okay. Not bad. For 1,537 yards and 11 touchdowns. And his most productive season was in 2022. And he caught 63 passes for 732 yards and 2 touchdowns. I would say his most productive in terms of targets. He was targeted 98 times that season. That's the most in a season he's had. Most amount of receptions, most amount of yards. But as a rookie, when Ben Roethlisberger in his final season was his quarterback, Pat caught 7 touchdowns. So 7 of his 11 career touchdowns came in his rookie season. And his catch percentage was way higher when Ben was his quarterback. And so you look at some of these numbers right away and you're like, okay, for Pat Freiermuth, it's like, if the quarterback play is better, Pat Freiermuth might be better and more productive. And so, but the Steelers aren't necessarily going to, they might, to a certain extent, try to give him a contract based off of what they think he can do. I mean, they kind of did that to us. They've kind of, that's typical practice for just about any team, but a lot of it goes into, what have you done to earn this contract? And you can look at some of these numbers. And yes, last year, Pat dealt with injuries, only played in 12 games. And, last season caught 32 passes for 308 yards. And the vast majority of that, a third of that came in one game. So the Steelers might look at that and be like, okay, well, in terms of production, the Steelers might not be willing to give him that much money. And so does Pat Freiermuth take the chance? Does he take the opportunity to possibly get, I wouldn't say guaranteed money, but because, no NFL contract is fully guaranteed unless it's specified, but give yourself a high floor in terms of what you can make, or really bet on yourself, bet on what you can do in Arthur Smith's offense, which Arthur Smith likes using tight ends. Would figure, with better quarterback play, now you can throw those questions back into the air. Russell Wilson doesn't like throwing to the middle of the field. Pat Freiermuth would most likely be most utilized over the middle of the field. How is that going to work? Right? But who knows? What if the Steelers give up on Russell Wilson after 4 games and Justin Fields becomes the guy, and then all of a sudden Pat Freiermuth takes off if Justin Fields is the quarterback? There are so many different ways that this could work out, and so that's why, does Pat Freiermuth possibly sign an extension that possibly makes him underpaid, or does he bet on himself and really think that throughout this system, throughout this season, he can do enough in terms of production to get a bigger contract? It's something to watch. It's a big season for Pat Freiermuth. I really think it is, because I don't know about you guys, but I think that the guy is capable of being not just a top 10 tight end, but possibly top 5 tight end. Like, I know that sounds like, okay, you might be smoking a little something, Chris, but like, he has he checks all of the boxes when it comes to needing to be a near elite level receiving tight end in this league. He has all of the tools to do it. And he has shown bits of it every now and then, but you can't deny the fact that Pat Freiermuth has not been and it's the same thing that we talked about with Najee Harris. It's not been a favorable situation for him. The best quarterback play he had was when he had Big Ben, and that was in his rookie year, or in his final year. That was Pat's rookie season was Big Ben's final season, and Big Ben in his final season was better than what the Steelers quarterback room has produced over the past 2 seasons, outside of the Mason Rudolph stretch last season, at the end of last season. So it's just, with Pat, it's like, man, like the capability has always been there, but man, he has been in a really crappy situation for a while. And so maybe a better offensive coordinator, better quarterback play finally allows us to really see what Pat can do when he has a better situation around him. And maybe he becomes a more productive and more efficient receiving tight end. So, Cody says 1,000 yards this year would make him $15 million a year. Oh, no, I don't think there's any doubt of that. I think if Pat Freiermuth had not just a Pro Bowl level, but like borderline, like second team All Pro type season, for sure. I think all of those previous 3 seasons kind of go out the window in terms of evaluating that contract. Everybody would see, we kind of say the same thing. We always knew what Pat was capable of. And the second he gets better quarterback play, or the second he gets a better offensive coordinator, he becomes way more productive, then yeah, it would make a lot of sense. So, but Pat is just one guy to consider. You got Najee Harris to consider. We've talked a lot about Najee Harris on the show, so we won't get that much into that today because we've kind of already hit on those things. Cam Hayward's another guy, and we've talked at length about Cam Hayward too, but those are 3 guys that all might deserve an extension. Jaylen Warren, even though he's going to be a restricted free agent, still might be worth talking to him. If the Steelers get to Latrobe and any conversations that possibly happen with Najee Harris die quickly, do the Steelers do what they did with the Mike Wallace and Antonio Brown situation? Do they try to give the bigger contract to Najee like they tried to give the bigger contract to Mike Wallace? Doesn't work out, so they turn around, they give the big contract to Jaylen Warren like they did with Antonio Brown. Worked for them the last time, but would it work this time? You know, there's a lot of people that think that Jaylen Warren's a better running back than Najee Harris. I don't necessarily fully agree with that. I think, you know, both. To reiterate what we've talked about previously, I think it doesn't have to be a Najee versus Jalen situation. Just enjoy the fact that they're one of the best running back duos in the league, and this is going to be the third season in a row that you have them. Enjoy it, right? So, but the Steelers ultimately have to start making decisions with these guys because contracts run out. Najee's going to his final season because they declined the fifth-year option. Jalen's going into the final season of his contract, though the Steelers, like I said, can still maintain certain rights over him, but it's still worth possibly if contract talks break down with Najee, maybe it's worth talking with Jaylen Warren and giving him a bigger deal. Jerry asked a really important question in case people don't know what's in Russell Wilson's contract. Or in case you don't know, Russell Wilson is in Pittsburgh on a dime. Because Denver ate tens of millions of dollars in cap space to get rid of him, they still owe a certain amount of money to Russell Wilson. Russ was able to sign for veteran minimum here. So he's with the Steelers for 1 year at a very, very low $1.21 million. That's it. So, yeah, it's, but what also comes from that quarterback situation, possibly saving some cap room for that. Very possible. Because at some point, the Steelers are going to have to pay a quarterback at some point. It could be next year. It could be 10 years from now, however long. At some point, the Steelers are going to have to pay a quarterback. They're not going to be able to go through like year after year after year of paying quarterbacks nothing. You know, we talked about it last week. You know, Trevor Lawrence gets $55 million a year on his contract. At some point, even if it's a, you know, quarterback that, you know, shoot, maybe it's Justin Fields. I don't know. But, you know, at some point, they're going to have to pay quarterback something. You know, they were eventually going to, you know, if things were going to work out with Kenny, they were going to have to pay him. Obviously, it didn't work out there. So now they're in the situation of, okay, let's see what happens with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And I think the Steelers obviously hope that one of those guys, I would say preferably Fields, works out because, shoot, Russell Wilson is 35, Justin Fields is 25. It would work out a lot better for the Steelers in the long term if Justin Fields somehow gets his opportunity this year and realizes his potential, and the Steelers can be like, okay, great, that's our franchise quarterback, and they give him the big money. But either way, you're going to have to, there has to be money down the road to pay a quarterback. There just has to be. Or maybe this just is exactly what we all think it is. The Steelers are setting aside that cap space to eventually make a trade for Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, any of these guys, any of these receivers, Cortland Sutton, DK Metcalf, any of these other receivers. Maybe that's just what we're doing. And Omar Khan, as I've stated before, is just playing the waiting game. He's waiting for the 49ers or whoever else to blink. And he refuses to give in and, you know, give in to the 49ers or whatever team's demands on what they want. And Omar gets his guy at his price instead. So, and here's a good thing, you know, here's a kind of a separate topic. Pittsburgh Toddy 86 says Lawrence in no way is worth that contract. We talked about last week. We broke down the numbers. I agree with that. I like no way you pay, like the numbers have not produced what you would think a quarterback getting $55 million a year is. But you have to, like I said, you have to pay a quarterback. Teams nowadays are desperate to get a quarterback, and for good reason. I've said it a million times on the show, and I have no problem saying it over and over again in case you're new here and you haven't heard me say it before. 75% of Super Bowls have been won by quarterbacks that are either already in the Hall of Fame or are undoubtedly going to be in the Hall of Fame. Talking about the likes of Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes, those types. They will be in the Hall of Fame. 75% of Super Bowls have been won with, teams have had a Hall of Fame quarterback. That's why teams are desperate for quarterback play. That's why teams are desperate. They will pay if they think that quarterback can help them win a Super Bowl. Because ultimately that's what it's about. It's about winning a Super Bowl. And if the Steelers, if something happens with Justin Fields this year and he looks to be a way better version of himself than he ever was in Chicago, don't be surprised if the Steelers give him a fat contract. Now, $55 million a year? No, not that level. Not unless I'm talking like situation where Russell Wilson goes out there, gets a season-ending injury in week 1, and Justin Fields goes out and wins MVP because he threw for 3,700 yards and ran for another 1,200 and has a Lamar Jackson type season, wins MVP, and helps the Steelers get to at least the conference championship. I just talking about like that would be the only case in which the Steelers are gonna be like, okay, that kind of puts us over a barrel here. Now we've actually got to pay this dude a gigantic amount of money. But most likely it's going to be a situation where they're not having to give him a gigantic contract, but it's going to be significant. It's probably going to be a number that most fans are not comfortable with. But it's the going rate to get good quarterback play in today's day and age. It just is. And then another situation, another branch from that, Stephen A brings it up, Russ for comeback play of the year. Shoot, man, what if this entire situation in Denver truly was not Russell Wilson almost at all? Not advocating for that. I'm just saying a what if. And something happens while he's in Pittsburgh and we see a very similar version of Russell Wilson that we saw during his heyday in Seattle. Some sort of fountain of youth situation here. And talking about way better quarterback play. What do the Steelers do at that point? Do they give a now 35-year-old quarterback a big-time contract to hope that he can sustain that for 3, 4, 5 years, however long? I don't know, man. And Jay Mood says it here, and this is kind of the conundrum, the Steelers are in with this situation. He says, I'm for either quarterback doing well. I would prefer the younger guy, but I'll take either. And that's why I said best case scenario would be things work out with Justin Fields, because if that happens, you can afford to give him a long-term contract because he's only 25 years old. With Russell Wilson, even giving him a 3-year contract past this season is a gigantic risk because it's just his age. Like it's the same situation that you have to talk about when potentially the Steelers give Cam Hayward an extension. You have to talk about the fact that these guys are way closer to 40 than you necessarily want them to be in order to give them that type of a contract. It's a big risk, especially because, okay, I pointed this out a while back. I think it might have been the first Chalk Talk I did after the Steelers signed Russell Wilson. One of the big things is him, like Russ and Big Ben both played the game pretty similarly in their younger days. Big Ben was a gunslinger, backyard style. Play broke down. He was going to get outside the pocket and he was going to make a play either with his legs or with his arm. And Russell Wilson has made a living and made an borderline Hall of Fame resume playing that type of way and playing that hero ball type of game. The difference is that Ben, as he got older, knew in order to have a longer sustained career, in which he had success, he had to evolve his game because he was just getting so beat up. Even for being a bigger body quarterback, he was getting beat up. He was getting hit a lot, getting sacked a lot, and he had to morph his game, and he did. And he became much more of a pocket passer, knew how to break down defenses before the snap, always had the arm talent to be that type of a quarterback, and that's exactly what he did because he ended up winning 2 passing titles doing it. But the difference is that Russell Wilson isn't built to play like that. He's not built to play from within the pocket and have success. He has always been the type of quarterback that is always going to be at his very best playing outside the pocket. So that's why I'm like any kind of big time contract that goes to Russell Wilson at this stage is a risk. Not saying he can't do it, but and right now, to be completely honest, all of this is complete speculation because we don't know the exact details of what this offense is going to look like. And to my previous, point here, Cody says Russ is 5'10" and Ben was 6'5". That's the difference, and that's the reason why Ben was able to change his game as he got older, and Russ doesn't. Russ can't play from the pocket the same way Ben can because they're completely different built quarterbacks. But, what if Arthur Smith's offense is the perfect place for a Russell Wilson or a Justin Fields? Now, Justin Fields has the bigger size. I think he's 6'3", if I'm not mistaken. Pull up his measurables real quick, just so I'm not misspeaking. But yeah, it's really quick. Hold on a second. Damn, slow computer. Yeah, 6'3", 228. Good size. It's a good size quarterback. Which really just makes it even because it's not just because of his age that he's faster and a better athlete than Russell Wilson. Justin Fields is a special athlete that can run, and he does that while being a much bigger quarterback than like a Russell Wilson type. So, long-term best case scenario would be that it somehow works out with Fields because, again, 25 years old, you can commit long-term to that. Much bigger risk if you do that with Russell Wilson. And Travis says they say Fields is just as fast as Lamar. I don't know for sure, but he's up there. I don't think that there's any. I don't think there's any doubt. Maybe I'm just not thinking of somebody, but I think the 2 best running quarterbacks in the league. I mean, Lamar Jackson, just because he's done it for so long, but then you kind of have to put Justin Fields up there. And Robert, so this is the thing here. This is the thing, and this is where I disagree with a lot of things. Robert here says Fields is an athlete, but not a quarterback. I completely disagree with that. Stephen A brings up Kyler. Kyler's up there too, but I still think Justin Fields is a better runner than Kyler Murray. You watch some of the runs that Justin had with Chicago. His vision as a ball carrier is actually really impressive for a quarterback. Really, really impressive. Kyler has that too. And J Moods to what Robert says to say he's not a quarterback. J Mood says Fields can spin it. 100%. Justin Fields knows how to throw a football. That's never been a debate. The biggest thing with Justin Fields is the turnovers and the consistency in which he can play within the structure of the offense. Those are the 2 undoubtedly biggest flaws in Justin Fields' game. And that's why I think you would be hard pressed to find anybody who's just going to automatically say, "Oh yeah, Justin Fields, this is definitely going to be the right situation for. He can definitely become a superstar." There's just too many questions. There's the potential has been seen because if you really watch, and I did a little bit of a breakdown on Justin, and maybe I'll do that because right now I'm doing my positional previews, which if you haven't read my quarterback one, that was about 2,500 words. Those are going to be what's carrying like the Chalk Talk series for like the next few weeks. Running backs are coming up next. That'll be out later tonight. But a lot of analysis. But I've done enough of Fields in which number one, he can definitely throw the deep ball. And that works in Arthur Smith's offense. 100% works in Arthur Smith's offense. Arthur Smith wants to attack defenses down the field out of play action. Justin Fields can throw the deep ball, and the numbers back it up. The numbers are very, very good out of play action. Or not out of play action, and throwing the deep ball. Actually, one of the best in the league. Like that, and that's not like a hyperbole. And like, no, the actual like passer rating, big time throws that are measured by multiple outlets. He's one of the best at throwing the deep ball. And Robert says, Fields lacks vision. Can that change? Yes, it can. That can always change. First off, younger quarterbacks, there's always, except, for the very, very few that come in and just figure it out right away. There's always a few seasons of quarterbacks getting acclimated to all of the different looks that NFL defenses throw at them. It's easier to play against your division rivals because you see them twice a year. But sometimes whenever you play against this opponent, you may play them 2 seasons in a row, but then not see them again for another 2. Just depending on the way the NFL schedule works. Or if you're talking about teams in the other conference, all these different defenses throw all these different types of looks and disguises and schemes, and there's just so much to take in, and defenses at the NFL level are way more complex than they are at the college level. It takes a while for quarterbacks to get used to seeing all those things pre-snap. Shoot, man, like if you've watched any of the stuff with Tom Brady, and I understand there aren't a lot of Steelers fans who like Tom Brady, but if you go and listen to like some of the interviews that he's done since he's retired and where he's talking about football, you understand why he was as good as he was, because he learned so many different ways that teams would show these disguises, not show these things. These are just this is stuff that quarterbacks don't pick up right away. It takes time. It takes experience. And 3 seasons for some guys isn't enough time. And so, yes, vision and being able to break down defenses, that can eventually be learned and taught. The biggest knock on Kenny, the pocket presence, being skittish in the pocket, that can be learned too. You can learn to get better at that. Shoot, remember what Mason Rudolph looked like as a rookie, right? His first real NFL experience when he got to come in, he did not look very comfortable in the pocket at times. But look at what he did whenever he came in down the stretch last season. He was as poised in the pocket as, shoot, man, I don't think you could ask him to be more poised in the pocket. That dude stood there. The throw against Seattle, to me, the deep throw to George Pickens down the field was the one that sticks out the most, because the pocket was just, he had to throw it out of a telephone booth, and he still made a heck of a throw to George Pickens down the field. That stuff can be learned over time. So yes, the stuff with Justin Fields can be learned. And yes, sometimes it does depend on what system you're in, and you can call those guys system quarterbacks or whatever. But if it results in wins and playoff wins and shoot, even a Super Bowl ring, who cares? Who cares? Maybe this is the system. I don't know if it is. And that's why my job isn't to try to push some sort of hype on Justin Fields or try to tell you that, hey, calm your shorts. Don't get excited over this guy. He turned the ball over 41 times in Chicago. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and try to be a fortune teller and tell you what Justin Fields may or may not do. I can tell you from what I've seen, yes, the potential's there, but yeah, there's also some questions. Throwing the ball over the middle of the field. It's not that he doesn't want to. It's just the numbers don't look good. Being to play within the structure of the offense. That's a big thing that I think is, because turning the ball over less will stem from being able to play within the structure of the offense consistently. That is, if you hear me say that, essentially what that is you're able to execute the play as called consistently. A lot of guys, whenever the play breaks, and you have to be able to get you through your progression. It's not just, see first read, hit first read, because obviously if NFL defenses are having their way, they're going to take away your first read. And so it's your ability to get to your second read and your third read and your check down. It's your ability to get through that stuff. And that is what Justin Fields has to work on. There were some positive signs down the stretch. He had a really good game against the Falcons. I think it was the second to last game last season. Went back and watched the film. It was a really good game. There was a couple different times where I saw Justin Fields go through a 4-read progression. Like it's there. The capability is there. It's finding an offensive coordinator that can really help get him to the next level, because when you look at the things that he's capable of on the field, dude, it's Lamar Jackson-esh. Like it is, he's capable of that type. It's, can he figure out the other stuff? So, yeah. You guys got a couple questions. I can try to knock out a couple really quick before we end this thing. Like I said, we're going to do 2 more shows this week for sure. Like I said, if all goes according to plan, I will not be here. I will not be able to do the show Thursday or Friday. But just because, like I said, I plan to be up in Pittsburgh looking at houses. So, any questions that you guys have? I'll do a couple Q&A really quick to close out the show. Really appreciate you guys. Let's see. Here's a good one from Gene. This is the first time in his career that he's had a great quarterback ahead of him. Is that an advantage? I think so, because, first off, I think Justin can, number one, learn from Russell, because, again, to reiterate what I said before, Russell has made a living and had a long successful NFL career playing outside the pocket quite a bit, right? And so, yes, that can help him. And also it drives up the competition level. I mean, yeah, there's no doubt about that. It drives up the competition level. It's going to force Justin to get better no matter what. Because if he has any chance of, because as things stand right now, if he doesn't get a new contract from the Steelers, he'll be a free agent. And if he wants to get a good contract, he's going to have to up his game. And he can shoot, man. He can, not that I think it's going to happen, but the best thing he can do is just go into training camp and preseason and just be 10 times better than Russell Wilson. Because then it might just force Mike Tomlin's hand to be like, this is our better quarterback and our business is winning games. So I don't know, man. Yes, but to answer your question, yes, it's an advantage for sure. Even if it doesn't give him the opportunity to see the field right away, I think it's still going to make him a better quarterback. So, good question. Damon asks, do you think we will have any rookies starting on the offensive line? If so, then who? Hard to say right now. I don't think he will be listed as the starter, or you will see him as the starter right away. But if I were a betting man, I would bet that Zach Frazier is the starting center in week 1. If he has a good training camp and a good preseason, and it's clear that he has a firm grasp on the offense, the system, and he has a good rapport up front, especially with Sayamalu and Daniels next to him on either side of him, I would say Frazier. Not as convinced on Fautanu, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I think Fautanu is not a good tackle. I think he's very, very capable, and I think that him and Broderick Jones will end up being 2 solid bookends for the Steelers. However, even Broderick Jones didn't start day 1. So if I had to bet where we sit right now on June 24th, a month away, literally a month away from when players report to St. Vincent College, I'm going to bet that Dan Morris is starting left tackle come week 1 and Broderick Jones is starting right tackle with Faltanu as the swing tackle. That would be my answer. So I would say 1 right now. That'd be Frazier. But I don't think that Frazier is going to be the starting center at the start of training camp or even preseason. I think you're going to probably see Nate Herbig be that guy. And then with Frazier having an opportunity to win that job. And I think Faltano will have an opportunity to win the starting right tackle job, which would then move Broderick Jones over to left tackle. And yeah, so let me try to knock out a couple more. I have literally gotten 6 phone calls, by the way, for those of you who have bought a house before, as soon as you go through the pre-approval process for a loan, you start getting a lot of phone calls. I have gotten now with those, I think I'm pushing near 40 phone calls today. It's kind of frustrating. Let's see. Let me knock out a couple more real quick. Travis asks, who would you say is our wide receiver 2 at this point? Van Jefferson, most likely. With Calvin Austin having the opportunity to win that. And when I say wide receiver 2, I mean the other outside guy opposite George Pickens with Roman Wilson as the slot guy. That would be my answer. Stephen A. If Frazier isn't the starter, that would be concerning. I think it's his job to lose. What other center would be our starter? It would be Nate Herbig. But like I said, it's just, and maybe it's the Kendrick Green situation that has made Mike Tomlin not want to just give rookies a job now. I haven't, over the past couple of years, you just haven't seen a rookie been given a job. Not even Joey Porter Jr. was given a job. So I think that's probably the reason why. But like I said, that's why I think even though he won't be the starting center at the beginning of training camp or preseason, it would not surprise me if Zach Frazier is the starting center in week 1. So that's why that's my guess. And honestly, I don't think there should be many fans that are upset over Mike Tomlin operating that way after what happened with Kendrick Green. So, yeah. There's yeah, and Damon bringing it up here. We gave it to Kendrick Green of all people in number 53. Yep. Gave him Marquise Pouncey's number. I mean, just gave him the job pretty much. It was, yeah. And B. Phil says, don't live in your fears. Yeah. But, you know, I'll bring up another cliche, learn from your mistakes. Make a rookie prove that he can do the job before you give it to him. So, yeah. All right. That seems like a good place to end the show. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate you guys bringing the questions here near the end. We got 2 more shows this week for sure. Keep you guys updated in case anything changes. We will do a show Thursday or Friday. As of right now, don't plan on it. Next week at some point, Matt Williamson will join. Really excited about that. Also, our new guy will be starting next week as well, and so be looking to get him on here as well. So excited about. Yeah, we got some good stuff coming up in the works, man. And I'll tell you what, man. DK talked about it in site stuff over the weekend. I'm excited to get up there and finally get through this whole moving process. To get there and to really give you guys some really great Steelers coverage. I cannot tell you my excitement level for it. Just ready to get all of this behind me, get to Latrobe and hit the ground running, man. I'm excited for it. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day. Enjoy it. Catch you guys on the flippity flip. See you tomorrow.